There was a huge oak tree in my grandma's backyard when I was about 6 or 7, which has been cut down since. Where I lived, it wasn't uncommon for someone to have oak trees somewhere in their yard, but this tree, it was stripped of its bark, making it a gray ash color. There were no leaves, and never once did I see any when I visited. I hated going to the back to play by myself. The branches always seemed to be looming over me, seeming to be dark even on a bright and sunny day. One day when I got bored, I decided to go outside to play. I decided to swing on a tire attached to the rope hanging from one of the branches. It was innocent enough. My grandmother was inside washing the dishes, but she could see me through the window as it had a direct view of the entire backyard. I sat down and slowly started to swing. The branches croaked and squeaked each time I went back and forth. It sounded like it would break at any moment, but it was actually pretty sturdy. Suddenly, I got a creepy feeling, like something was watching me from above. I was too scared to look up. I looked through the window to see if my grandmother was still there, but when I looked at her, she was looking above me, a terrified look on her face, her hand covering her mouth. It felt like the sun suddenly vanished and a misty fog rolled around me. When did that get there? I couldn't move. My flight or fight had me at the option 3, frozen. I started to hear a creaking sound on the branch above me, like something was swinging back and forth slowly. It wasn't me. I hadn't moved within the last 2 minutes. I almost started to cry when my grandma finally came rushing outside to get to me, quickly moving me. She shielded me from whatever she saw in the tree. Nothing was said when we got inside, though. I think she didn't want to freak me out more than I already was. My grandmother moved from that house a few months later after cutting the tree down. She didn't want me to come over after that, but now that she's in her new home, she lets me come over whenever I want. A few years later, I had remembered the incident. I asked her what happened. She sighed. I had a feeling she still didn't want to tell me, and answered with the most terrifying answer anyone could think of. There was a woman hanging from her neck. It was all twisted and a bone protruded through her skin, but she wasn't dead. She had the look of death in her eyes, and she was fixated on me, struggling to reach me. When my grandmother had gotten to me, she started choking on her own blood. After hearing that, I was glad she shielded me from seeing that. I'm happy that I never went back there, and I'm happy that tree was cut down so no other child has to experience what I went through. I did some research and found out a couple who had lived in this house before. The husband beat and killed his wife and hung her on the tree to make it look like suicide. Whatever happened that night still remains in my memory, but now at least no one else will have to see it. For the past 30 days, at exactly 2:34 a.m., I've been woken up by a child screaming every single night for 30 nights. I would say the child is around 5 or 6 years old and female. Living in a small neighborhood, I know everyone that lives here. I could list them all off right now without having to think about it. I know for a fact that all the children that have ever lived here are well over 25 now and have left the neighborhood to live somewhere with better job opportunities. No one has moved here in the past 12 years. At least that's what I thought until last night when I looked out the window after being woke again. Being a widow since last year, I live by myself, except for my cat who slept through it all. I wiped the steamed up windows and peered out to the half-lit street. In the middle of a road was a small, rather slim child. Everything about them seemed normal, except the fact that they were standing on the road at 2:34 at night, and their eyes eyes. Even squinting out into the dimly lit lane, I could easily make out those eyes. So white they were almost glowing. There was no visible pupil, and not once did I see them blink. They were just staring straight forward. Suddenly they fell on the floor. Another scream pierced my ears. There wasn't anyone nearby that could have knocked them over, or a car in sight. It seemed like a huge gust of wind had blown over them, which would make sense, but the weather had been eerily calm all night. I debated whether I should go outside and make sure they were okay, but a part of my brain told me that something wasn't right. I stayed put, keeping my eyes on the small child laying on the hard, cold floor. There was no sign of breathing, and I realized they could be really in danger. I reached for my phone to turn it on, but no signal. I looked back on the street, and they were gone, like they had vanished into thin air. I managed to convince myself it had been all my imagination and slowly got back into bed. Just as I pulled the covers over myself, I heard the door banging 2 times. I sat up straight. Someone knocked again, 3 times this time. I reached under my bed for the gun that I kept there. 4 knocks, sharp and clear, interrupted me. In my head, I tried to piece everything together. Suddenly, I realized every night at 2:34 a.m., I heard a scream. 2 knocks, then 3, then 4. I started to panic. Fear spread through my body. The door crashed open, and that was when I blacked out. Next thing I knew, I was in a hospital. 3 cops were sitting beside my bed. I closed my eyes again and heard them speak. They said someone had called them after hearing a scream. They said it sounded like a woman, probably in her 50s. I realized then what that meant. I'm a 56-year-old woman. Every night I heard someone scream until it reached the end of the month, and it was my turn. I sat up. I asked the police officers if they had caught anyone. They said no. I asked them who called. They said it was anonymous. The only clue they had was a ring they found in the middle of the street with the letters RW engraved in it. RW, RW, RW. I scanned my head for people I knew with those initials. Only one person. My dead husband, Robert White. They asked me if I would like to see the ring in case I could identify it. They brought it to me and I took it in my hands. I knew this ring. I had the same one on my finger with my initials on it. This was the ring I had given my husband for our 30th anniversary. He had never taken it off. He was buried with it.